I was just wondering whether the chart when you show the gender of caregiver, yeah, the 60-40, right? Female, is it skewed by FGW?
No, that did not include FGW, just span. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. If it's going to be including of say Filipino, Indonesian, and so on.
Yeah, because the next chart shows daughter 34%, son 31%.
That's right.
Percent is not too much.
Family members.
Different, right?
That's right.
Right, the first chart is 60-40.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Just make a comment on that. That's right. So this slide is a distribution regarding relationship, family relationship, right? So yeah, in fact, do they even add up to 100%? May not due to some rounding up or rounding down. But within here, for instance, son, daughter-in-law, we don't know how many is son, how many is daughter-in-law. This is the female part. Yeah, grandchildren also male and female inside, so we don't know. Yeah. So the clear cuts will be daughters, wives, those are clear cut females, and others, siblings, so not that clear cut. Right, but each other don't have that. That's right. Yeah, family members. All right, let's go quickly into a few other empirical, maybe 2 or 3 other empirical studies regarding model of care, and then we can go into the interventions. All right. Okay. In this one, right, formal long-term care, informal caregivers, subjective well-being, and service utilization. In this study, right, the question was, is there a relationship between caregiver well-being and use of long-term care services? Right? And this is not a question just for Singapore, but a question for regarding all possible long-term care services in the world that has been published in journal articles and dissertations and theses. So what my team and I did was we did a systematic review, right? A systematic review and a meta-analysis of all available or all published research, as well as dissertations and thesis on, I think, ProQuest, that's the database, right? That's the thesis. And then for those other published research, we did it on Medline, SiteInfo, and I think two more other databases, right? So here's what we found regarding a research question, that research studies that involve fewer female rather than male informal caregivers, right, reported 86% higher chance or higher odds of caregivers experiencing higher depression. Right, so it's almost like you could say males tend to be more depressed, right? When whoever they care for are using long-term care service. Right? This is not Singapore only. We are talking about research studies that have been published. Right? Next one. Studies that involve nursing home use or non-use, right, reported 70% lower odds of caregivers experiencing higher burden. Right? That means to say that, if I can put it in other words, nursing home use, right, the LTCS used there by patient really refers to nursing home use. Okay, in the second point then. Regarding nursing home use, caregivers experience language there. Studies involving nursing home. Oh, okay. All right. It's like that. For those patients who are using nursing homes, residents of nursing homes, right, their caregivers tend to feel less burden. That's what it's saying. That's the technical lingo, right? So what we're saying is, regarding non-institutionalized, non-residential services, caregivers compared to residential ones tend to feel more. Next one. Right? non-US or non-American studies, when compared to American studies, reported 50% or half lower chances of caregivers experiencing poorer health or worse health status in relation to long-term care use. Right? That means to say that studies that were done outside of US with non-US participants, non-US caregivers, non-US patients, right, tend to have caregivers say that they're okay, they're not so poor in health, right? Those are self-perceived health, right? That's what we found. So just the first 3 points there already tell us, right? This is done on how many studies? A total of 60 over studies. So we actually spread out from a pool of 300 over studies that were searched, that came out from the searching the various databases. Right? We had filter criteria, right? Filtered them through several different things. Essentially, we filtered them through, they must be English, they must collect data directly from a caregiver, not based on some other proxy, right? And not based on medical records only, right? And then from all those studies must also report numerical or quantitative data, not only qualitative, not only just verbatim or words. We took those studies and we managed to find these 3 things. So essentially what the first 3 points tell us is that caregiver burden, caregiver depression, caregiver health status, and these 3 aspects or attributes of caregiver well-being are associated with or are related to use of long-term care service by the patient. So now we have a study that says that it's not just how well the patient's patient-related factors, patient-related characteristics affect their use. Now, how well subjectively a caregiver feels also affects the patient's use of long-term care. That's the study, right? The 4th point that there were unexpectedly few studies that provided quantitative data on this topic, despite the many years of research involving informal caregiving in the context of long-term care. Right? That means to say, often in the past 20 years, past 30 years, right, there may be a lot of studies that talk about informal caregiving, or in fact even burden, depression, anxiety, and health status of caregivers, but only a small proportion of those link those 2 topics together: the topic of use of long-term care by patient as well as caregiver well-being. These are the studies that we found. What else do we have? We also have now a Singapore stroke survey. Now, in Singapore, stroke is one of the key, illnesses that cause burden, right? We know that, right? It contributes to a high proportion of the days disability adjusted life years, right? So a study was done, 3 time points, baseline, 3 months, and 12 months, right? During that period of time at all 5 public tertiary hospitals. Right? It was then, there were only 5, okay, with 482 patient caregiver diets, right? The patients had to have a recent stroke, that means within a month, greater than 40, beyond 40 years old, and no global aphasia, right? The caregivers were direct or distant relatives or friends. Okay, never mind the statistics part. Just want to show two results that we found that is relevant for our topic today. We found that, right, there are what we call distress and non-distress profile caregiving. Now, this word distress and non-distress wasn't obtained by an inventory or a scale. We asked people to rate on 1 to 10, 1 to 5, and then from there we calculate a score, and then beyond a certain cutoff is distress, beyond a certain cutoff is non-distress. No, we didn't do it that way. What we did was we took the scores on burden, scale of burden, ZBI, Zurich Burden Inventory, interview. Then we had a scale on health status, and then we had another scale on social support, right? And we also have a scale on, I beg your pardon. The other things that didn't come out here, this one is supposed to say depression, and then that thing there is supposed to say relationship quality. I beg your pardon. There are 5 points here. You see kind of the chart has 5 segments, right? But those 5 segments, only 3 are labeled as burden, health status, and social support. There are 2 intervening segments that aren't labeled. I'm sorry about that. It's my formatting problem of the PowerPoint slides, right? But those are right? Between burden and health status is supposed to be depression, caregiver depression. And then between health status and social support is supposed to be caregiver relationship quality with the care recipient or the patient. Right? So we took all the measures on all these 5 variables, and then we put them into statistics, and we try to see whether we can kind of profile the caregivers on what we call a latent profile. That means the caregivers are not supposed to differentiate based on each of these 5, but just among all the measures, all the questionnaire items that we have, how do they fall? Right? What kind of caregivers do we have? So we realized that there are 2 profiles. The first profile is really what we call the distressed caregivers who score high on burden, depression, and health status at all 3 time points. So that group is the green, the bright green ones. This one. That's the okay. This is bright to me. To you, is it a dark green? Okay. This is the distress group. Right? You see that burden is high, depression, health status lower, but so these 2 are high. Burden, depression, burden, depression. Okay, that is distress. That's the distress group. Okay, okay. I must apologize. This PowerPoint slide shouldn't be green all the way. It just didn't come out well. So I think maybe I should redo this to make sure it's right. Visible, much more visible. I apologize to those people at home as well. But we essentially found 2 groups, right? The distress group comprised about 20%, 20 in the first time point baseline, 3-month post-stroke, another 20% distress group, and then at 12-month post-stroke, another 12% distress group. The non-distress would be the other group, so 80, 80, 87, right? In those 3 time points. These are caregivers of patients with stroke. Based on burden, depression, health status, quality, relation quality with care recipient, and social support. Here's the other thing we found. 24% or thereabouts, right, were distressed at baseline, remain distressed at 12 months. Based on depression, burden, primarily depression and burden. Right? You see that red color 0.24 there, right? So distress at baseline at about 24% will continue to be distressed when they were at T2. T2 is 12-month post-stroke. Right? So 97%, right, were non-distressed at baseline. Well, good. They continue to be non-distressed. So that's happy. That's a happy result to have. But this 24% isn't a good result to have, right? It's concerning. That's about a quarter of these caregivers, right, who had their patient, who entered the system or started to give care to a stroke patient who were about to be discharged at baseline, remain to be, say, burdened or depressed, at least, right, 24%. So this tells us that we might have to identify this group early at baseline, which is T0, which is really the point of discharge of the stroke patient. Assess them, support them, deal with them, intervene on them, so that by the time 12-month post-stroke is reached, they don't come to this group anymore. So that they become from distress to non-distress, 76%. Hopefully this amount here will increase, this proportion here. That's what we hope to see. Right? So that's the result I like to show you. This results like that tell us that in Singapore, at least where stroke patients, where informal caregivers of stroke patients are concerned, yeah, it's not everybody finds it burdensome or finds stressful or distressful, so to speak. But we have a segment there, right? This perhaps 20 to 30%. We have a segment there, and this segment continues to remain in an undesirable state, at least psychologically speaking, right, or psychosocially speaking. This is a group there. So now, if we want to have a good a model of care that works, this segment should be taken care of. Right? Of course, the other segment where non-distress remains non-distress. That's good. We should also take care of that, yes. But this segment should be taken care of. What we are saying is right now, our current model of care isn't able to take care of this. Right? So that gives us a clue on, this group here gives us a clue on what we need to tweak, right, in our model of care. Right? In our interventions, we need to address this distress. So we need to start early at time 0. Right? We need to find a chance to get them into the system or get ourselves into their informal caregiving system.